He didn't come into my room. He didn't have to. He just stood in the hallway and waited long enough for me to feel it everywhere. My name is Lena. I'm 25. I live in the house I grew up in. The one with the uneven floorboards in the upstairs hall and the humming refrigerator that's been dying for years. The one with the porch light that only flickers during storms and the front door that never locks on the first try. I live here with my mother. And her husband, Carl. He came into our lives when I was 13. Not suddenly, not with any ceremony. Just appeared one day beside her, in his quiet, pressed shirt way. "This is Carl," she said, like introducing a neighbor. "He'll be around more." She didn't ask what I thought. And I didn't say anything. That became our rhythm, him not asking, me not speaking. Carl isn't cruel. Isn't soft, either. Just there. In the kitchen fixing things that don't need fixing. In the living room reading his newspaper like the world still delivers news that way. Never raising his voice. Never raising his eyes. Always existing just enough to be undeniable. He doesn't feel like a stepfather. He doesn't feel like anything. Or he didn't. Until last Tuesday. Mom left for her sister's house that morning. A quick trip, 2 or 3 nights at most. I helped her pack. Watched her fold her favorite cardigan into her weekend bag like it meant something. "You'll be okay, right?" she asked. Her voice casual, eyes already on her phone. I said yes. I always say yes. She kissed my cheek on the way out. Carl wasn't supposed to go with her, but he mentioned something about a work meeting upstate and a late return. She seemed fine with that. So did I. The house exhaled the second she pulled out of the driveway. I felt it in my bones, that lightness, that hollow kind of freedom that only comes when no one's watching. When silence stretches out without apology. I didn't plan to do anything special. Just enjoy the stillness. But the moment the house felt empty, I did what I always do when I'm alone. I took the long kind of shower that steams up the mirror and soaks the bath at. I let the water hit the back of my neck until I forgot how much I hold there. I stood there until my fingers pruned and my thoughts softened. Then I put on clothes I never wear when other people are home. Soft things. Loose. Nothing matching. Barefoot, because the tile was warm and the floor felt like mine again. I dried my hair halfway, then gave up. It curled at the edges. I let it. Everything was still. The kind of still that fills your chest with quiet. Until it wasn't. It started as a breath of something, not sound, not movement. Just a shift. A weight in the air that hadn't been there a minute before. I was in my room, sitting on the floor sorting through a drawer I hadn't opened in months. There were old letters, receipts, a pair of earrings I thought I'd lost. And then I felt it. That slow, unmistakable certainty that I wasn't alone. I paused. Not from fear, not yet. Just curiosity. The hallway behind me was quiet. But not empty. My breath caught without permission. I turned my head toward the door. Nothing. But the door was open. Just a little. I hadn't closed it all the way after my shower. It hadn't mattered. Until now. I rose slowly. Every sound felt too loud. The shift of my legs against the rug, the creak of the floorboard. I stood in front of the door and listened. Still nothing. But the silence had changed. It wasn't the familiar quiet of an empty house. It was something else. A presence. I stepped into the hall, and there he was. Carl. Standing at the far end. Not moving. Not blinking. Just watching. His face unreadable. His body still. He didn't speak. Neither did I. The hallway stretched between us like a held breath. I managed a sentence. Barely. "I thought you were out of town." He answered without pause. I came back early. Nothing more. No apology. No smile. Just that. I nodded. Like that explained anything. Like that made this okay. Then I stepped back. Into my room. I should have closed the door. But I didn't. I left it ajar. Half an inch. Maybe more. Enough. And I told myself it was nothing. That I wasn't uncomfortable. That I wasn't trembling. But I was. Just a little. Just enough to notice. I sat back on the floor, pretending to care about the contents of my drawer. My fingers moved, but my thoughts didn't. I didn't look at the door. Not right away. But I knew. I knew he was still out there. Not walking. Not leaving. Just there. Like a shadow I couldn't shake. And my chest felt too tight. My skin too warm. Every second stretched thin. I told myself I wasn't waiting. But I was. For what? I didn't know. Just the next breath. The next sound. The next shift in the air. Anything. But all I got was stillness. And the terrible weight of being seen. I didn't sleep. Not even close. The house was quiet in the way snow is quiet. Heavy. Pressed down. The kind of quiet that hums if you listen long enough. A hush that isn't peace, but pressure. I lay in bed with the lights off, my body curled into itself. Eyes open. Wide. Unblinking. There's a silence that wraps around you like a blanket, soft and safe. This wasn't that. This silence clung to the skin. It asked questions. It listened. I didn't dare move. Because I knew. He was still in the hallway. I couldn't explain how. I just knew it. Like knowing a storm is coming before the sky changes. Like hearing someone breathe in a room they haven't entered yet. My door was still open. Just a sliver. A crack. But enough to hold an entire universe of what I hadn't said. And the air coming through it was different. It felt watched. Every second stretched out like it was afraid of the next. I could hear the tick of the clock in the living room, even through the walls. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the shift of the wind outside. But louder than all of it was that door. That barely open door and the space beyond it. I kept my eyes on the ceiling, counted the faint dots in the plaster, memorized the shape of shadow on the wall. I kept myself small, contained. Every so often, I thought I heard something. A weight shift. The whisper of skin brushing against paint. Maybe the sigh of breath held too long. I told myself I imagined it. But my body didn't believe me. It reacted like prey. My pulse was too fast. My mouth too dry. My fingers curled against the sheet like I needed something to hold. And still, he didn't move. That was the part one couldn't shake. He didn't do anything. He just waited. And in the space between that stillness and the door, something shifted in me. Not fear. Not want. Something quieter. Sharper. Awareness. The kind you can't undo. Around 2 a.m., I got up. Slowly. Carefully. I stepped into the hall like a thief, barefoot and silent. The hallway was dark, but not completely. Moonlight spilled in from the window at the end. He was gone. Or he had moved. I couldn't tell. But the air still held the shape of him. I didn't walk to the kitchen. I didn't do anything but stand there, hand pressed lightly to my own collarbone, listening. To nothing. To everything. Then I returned to bed. Didn't close the door. Still couldn't. And the rest of the night passed in a fog. Morning crept in slowly, as if unsure of its welcome. The light didn't feel like relief. It felt like exposure. Like being seen too clearly. I stayed under the covers until the sun reached the far wall. Only then did I rise. The hallway was empty. The stillness had gone flat. I didn't see him. Not at first. But I knew he'd been there. I made coffee with unsteady hands. burned my tongue, left the mug on the counter half full, walked from room to room like I was looking for something I wouldn't admit. I vacuumed, folded laundry I don't remember putting in the machine, wiped down already clean surfaces, rearranged books, sat down, stood up. Nothing settled. And then I went upstairs. And there it was. The mark. A faint scuff on the wood floor, right where he'd stood. It could have been from anything. Shoes. A chair. A fall. But I knew. That's where he had waited. And I hadn't stopped him. That evening, I told myself I would stay in my room. That I would read, or watch something, or call someone just to hear a voice that didn't make me tremble. But I didn't. I wandered. Eventually, I went to the kitchen. Not for hunger. Just to move. The light in the hall flickered once. Then again. Probably nothing. But when I turned to go back to my room, I saw him. Carl. Standing in the same place. The same way. Motionless. I didn't flinch this time. I met his eyes. And I felt them. Like hands. I thought you were out of town, I said. The words were almost the same. My voice was lower this time. Uncertain. He didn't answer right away. Then he did. I came back early. Same words. This time I nodded. Then I walked back to my room. And I left the door open. Wider. No excuse. I sat on the bed, water glass still in hand. My legs tucked underneath me. The weight of the hallway pressed against my spine. I didn't look back. But I felt him. Still. Like a bruise you can't see but know exactly how to touch. I didn't close the door. And I didn't sleep. I just breathed. Barely. I lay there, letting the light from the hall paint my sheets. And the silence said more than either of us could ever bear to speak. And still, the door stayed open. No one tells you how heavy silence can get. You think it's absence, blank space. But it isn't. It's weight, density, a kind of presence that crawls into your lungs and sits there, refusing to leave. That week, the house became a new shape. By day, it pretended to be the same. Walls, furniture, a roof. But at night, it bent. It thickened. It watched. Carl never knocked. Never came in. But I knew when he was outside my door. I always knew. The floorboard closest to the bathroom creaked only when someone leaned a certain way. He stepped there each night. Only once. A single breath of sound. Then nothing. The air told me the rest. It wasn't just still. It was listening. He never said anything. Never moved past that spot. Never touched the doorknob. And yet, I felt it. That tether between us. Invisible. Intact. I told myself I was imagining it. But the human body knows what a door means when it isn't fully closed. And mine had learned it too well. Each night, I told myself I'd shut it. All the way. Just to sleep. Just for peace. And each night, I left it. A few inches. A slip of hallway light. A line of shadow that never moved. Until I started waiting for him. Until the stillness became a kind of company. During the day, I tried to forget. I cooked. Cleaned. Called my mother to check in, to hear her voice, to pretend things were the same. They weren't. Carl didn't mention the nights. Didn't look at me too long. But he was different too. Quieter. More exact. He never asked where I was going. He never asked if I slept well. But he moved through the house like a person memorizing its edges. I caught him once in the living room, standing still, facing the hallway. Not moving. Just thinking, maybe. Or listening. He didn't see me. Or maybe he did. And still, I said nothing. Because that's what we had become. A house of unsaid things. The fourth night, I sat on the floor again. The drawer I'd started organizing was still open. Still full of things that meant nothing. Old notes. dried pens, a button from a sweater I no longer owned. I picked things up and set them down. My hands were busy. My mind wasn't. The light from the hallway brushed across the carpet. It stayed there, not moving. Just like him, the floor creaked once, then stopped. No footsteps, no breath. Still, I knew he was there. And I did nothing, because this wasn't something I could interrupt. It had become ritual. His silence, my stillness. Not a game, not a test. A need. I wanted to move. I wanted to close the door, to pull the blanket over my head, to stop the burning that spread through my chest every time that sliver of light stayed too long. But I didn't, because I wanted something else more. Not touch, not words, recognition. I wanted to be seen. And I was. Exactly as I was. The version of me I didn't show anyone. The girl who waited in silence. The woman who left the door open. That night, I sat with my back against the bed frame, legs drawn up. My hands stayed still for the first time in days. I listened to the hallway, listened to the nothing, and inside it, everything. I imagined his breath, imagined the slope of his shadow under the door, imagined his hand, not on the knob, but near it. Wanting, not acting. And the longer he didn't move, the more the heat inside me grew. This wasn't fear. This was a kind of ache I didn't know how to name. The stillness was no longer something around me. It was something inside me. A slow undoing. I stood up only once, closed the door, softly, pressed my back to it, and stayed there. Not to shut him out, but to feel how close he was on the other side. My skin buzzed where the wood touched my spine. My palms flattened against the surface. And for the first time, I imagined what it would feel like if he knocked. Just once. Just lightly. And I felt my breath catch at the thought. But he didn't. He never did. And that became the whole thing. He never crossed the line. And I never invited him to, but the line moved, and I moved with it. Every night, the stillness grew louder. The air inside the house got thicker. I stopped calling my mother, stopped leaving the house, because the moment I did, I missed it. That press of quiet, that presence outside my door. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I should leave, get out, go anywhere. But I didn't, because I had never felt so fully watched. Not in a way that made me small, but in a way that made me real. Carl didn't need to speak. He just needed to stay in the hallway. And I just needed to leave the door open. Even when I told myself not to. Even when I sat in the dark, legs drawn in, heart beating against my own arms. Even when I could feel the weight of his gaze not on my skin, but inside it. Even when I whispered to myself, "It's nothing. It's just stillness. It's just silence." But silence can bruise, and stillness can become a shape you long for, even when it breaks you open. Even when it makes you lie to yourself in every other room of your life. Because once I started living in the quiet space between the hallway and my skin, I couldn't go back. I didn't want to. He never entered my room. But the silence did. And it stayed. He never knocked. Not once. He never said a word to me about those nights. Never asked. Never hinted. Never looked for permission. But I knew he was there. And he knew I knew. That was the shape of it. That was the arrangement. I waited. And he waited. And neither of us crossed the line. But that line moved every night. Every minute the door stayed open. Every second I lay there breathing shallow beneath the hush of the hallway light. He never touched me, but I still feel the weight of him, because what we shared wasn't a moment. It was a space, a silence stretched thin and wide and unbearable. It was a closeness so precise it never needed skin. The last night, I heard him pause outside the door longer than usual. I counted. 8 heartbeats. Then nothing. I waited for the floor to creak again, for the sound of his retreat. But there was only silence. I got up slowly, my body tense with knowing. And when I pressed my palm to the door, I felt warmth on the other side. He was still there. I didn't speak. I didn't open it. I just stood there, breathing. A woman on one side, a man on the other, and between us, the whole world burning. When I woke the next morning, I felt it before I saw it. The shift. The absence. Carl was gone. Not just out of the hallway, but out of the house. No sounds. No footsteps. No movement. Only a note on the kitchen counter. Had to go. Tell your mother I'll be back Sunday. See. Nothing more. No explanation. No goodbye. Just distance. I stared at that note until the letters blurred. I thought I would feel relief. I didn't. I felt hollow, like a room with the air pulled out of it. I moved through the day like a sleepwalker, my body going through the rituals. Dishes, laundry, windows open, then closed again. But I kept glancing at the hallway. At the door I finally closed. And every time I passed it, I felt the echo of what hadn't happened there. By evening, I sat on the edge of my bed again. Not waiting, just remembering. I touched the doorknob, not to open it, just to feel something. And it felt cold. That night, I didn't leave the door open. But I didn't sleep either. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering if silence had an aftertaste. It does. It tastes like questions. When my mother came home, she brought groceries and leftover gossip from her sister's place. She was tired, talkative, oblivious. She didn't ask how my week had been. I didn't volunteer. Carl returned a day later than the note said. No explanation. Just walked in with his bag and a nod. And I felt the temperature in the house drop. Not from cold. From recognition. He didn't look at me. And I didn't ask why. We passed each other in doorways like people who used to know a secret. Who still do. But can't say it. I felt the silence build again, but differently. Not an ache this time. A bruise. And every day since, it stayed with me. I haven't spoken to him directly. And he hasn't tried. But when we're alone in the house, I can feel the air shift. Like the hallway remembers. And I do too. I remember the open door. The waiting. The wait. He didn't do anything. And that's exactly what I can't get over. Because I waited too long. To close the door. To speak. To name what it became. And now the silence between us says more than either of us ever will. I don't know if he remembers it like I do. But sometimes when he pours his coffee, he lingers in the doorway. Just for a breath too long. And I'm back there again. On the other side of the door. Holding my breath. As if he might still be waiting. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd closed the door that first night. Would he have stood there anyway? Would he have waited? Would the silence have grown roots anyway? Or was it me? My fault. My choice. The way I looked at him that night. The way I didn't. There is something about leaving a door open that says more than speech ever could. There is something about knowing and not knowing. Wanting and not touching. We built something neither of us could step out of. A stillness that held both our names. There are days I want to ask him. What did you feel? Why did you wait? Why didn't you say anything? But I know that if I did, if I said any of it, it would fall apart. Not the truth. Not the moment. Me. I would fall apart. Because I have lived inside that silence for too long. It has become a skin. And to take it off would mean starting over. I am not afraid of shame. I am afraid of nothingness. Of knowing it meant nothing to him. Of being the only one who remembers the exact sound of the hallway light flickering at 1:13 a.m. The exact breath I held on the 6th night. The way my body curled when he stepped away, not toward. The way I still ache in that shape. I am not asking for him to come back. I am asking only to never forget. Because forgetting would mean none of it mattered. And I cannot bear that. I live with him still. In this house. We say the right things now. We ask about groceries, the weather, my mother's health. We stay in our lanes. He watches TV in the den. I read upstairs. But sometimes we pass in the hallway, and neither of us speaks. And the air goes still. And something inside me quiets. Because for 1 second, one breath, we are there again. The door is open. The silence is alive. And I am burning, without fire, without flame, just the memory of stillness. And all the words I will never say.